200,000 customers is a milestone, right? It's not something easy, okay? $2 billion of revenue. They've probably taken 18 years to get to 200,000 customers.
They crack the distribution. If you see the last 15 years, which was like a very small group of people, like a few thousand people, correct? And the distribution is so much focused in, like everything that their distribution model is so much so aligned to the sales motion.
It's about time. They have given themselves 18 years to get to where they are. But what remained constant is they went behind customers who were similar in the terms of buying process as what it was for their marketing hub. 18 years. And what Darvish says very interestingly is to get to the first 100,000 customers, they took 15 years. To get to the next 100,000 customers has just taken 3 more years from there.
Yeah, Ramesh.
Some questions. Let me get these questions ready for you. Hello, Sri. Hello, everyone. So, yeah, you seem to be relaxing on a Friday afternoon. What's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I was just want to tell you about this email. I just opened that email. So I just got an interesting email from one of my friend who's an entrepreneur, right? And the email reads, "Hey, Sri," and he just does the courtesy on starting the email, and he says, "Hey, Sri, you've been in building products in the crowded market. How do I win in a crowded market?" Right? That's
win in a crowded market.
Yeah, that's a question.
$1 million question.
I wish I
did. You answer that, or did you just put it in your drafts mode and?
No, a lot of times I kind of ask you more questions back to let the person answer themselves. So I kind of wrote an email back asking them, what does winning for you means, right? And does it mean you want to do $100 million revenue in less than 10 years, or have 100,000 customers in 15-20 years? And the answer to those questions would probably answer his own question. That's what I thought. What do you think?
I think Srivatsan is now also starting a consulting company, and if you're in the business of starting up a company, I think he's more than happy to. He's being this new age guru, trying to giving you questions so that you can get inspired by the internally. But it's just a sensible question. I think it's a question which every entrepreneur probably might have. The question even I'm sure we have, and most of them have, is that what is winning, right? So in a market, typically, India founders building up the global market. You look for a large TAM, crowded market. So what does winning makes in a crowded market? I mean, absolutely kudos to your friend. I'm sure he's in some pensive mode, and I'm sure he's well funded right now to even get through this aggressive goal. But that is getting to you.
Somebody is not well funded, they don't ask this question.
Exactly. So that's a good thing. Congratulations to your friend. Winning is, it's a philosophical question, right? And I think you've kind of put in the questions, put the ball back on his court to kind of get him started on thinking on what winning means. Well, we have some work to be done on our own winning as entrepreneurs. But before we start, I think you have an answer to that. If we start talking about it, welcome to yet another episode of Reset to Zero. And we seek more answers from philosophical questions like this in this podcast. So,
welcome to 0 to 1, like Ramesh said. Ramesh, I think let's start with that question. Like, hey, what does winning means for startup which is starting up right now, looking at 20 years from now? How do you go about thinking about it?
Incidentally, what appears in my mind is Dharmesh Shah's tweet recently about hitting 200,000 customers.
Okay.
Congratulations, Dharmesh, and many kudos to you and the entire HubSpot team, Yamini and everyone else. 200,000 customers is a milestone, right? It's not something easy. Okay. And there are. If I look at the graph that Dharmesh has kind of put in, right, there are a few things that talk about, in this case, the great answer to your friend is about winning. And rightly, you asked him the right question of what do you want to win, number of customers, or you want top line growth, revenue. So let's take an example and break this down. Let's break this podcast into HubSpot's growth, right? $2 billion of revenue. They've probably taken 18 years to get to 200,000 customers. I think what it takes to winning, HubSpot has won. Right, in their own sense, right? They've won within, and they probably have many more battles to win. It's about time. They have given themselves 18 years to get to where they are, they probably wouldn't have even dreamt of this journey when Dharmesh started. So Dharmesh's graph just clearly says that it probably took them close to, they started in 2006, 2012, 6 years to get to the first 50 million. And it's been the game of doubling every 2 years. They got to 100 million in 12 years, in 2006 to 2012, so in 6 years. In the eighth year, they got to the 100 million. Pardon me. In the eighth year, they got to 100 million. And ever since, they've been expanding their TAM. So, in essence, it's all about waiting it out. 18 years, TAM expansion. They went to many markets. They've kind of gotten that opportunity to play around. They stuck around with just one way of selling too, right? We spoke about the B2C way of selling. This is probably their B2C way of selling. They stuck to SMBs. So these are the wins that they have gotten, the consolidation of which is a 200,000 customer win that Dharmesh is probably talking about. So,
Kamesh, you're just talking about multiple factors. I can actually go through one of them, each one of them.
Yeah.
You started off with by saying that, in fact, it's so astonishing to see a company who started as a marketing automation software.
Yep.
For somebody who started as an inbound marketing automation software.
Yes.
To basically be able to acquire 200,000 customers.
Absolutely.
And you're saying it took them 18 years. And in the process, like you said, they've done multiple things. I mean, one of them you highlighted was they're expanding TAM.
Yeah.
Like that was basically, I would say, one of the most important thing which would be required for a founder, entrepreneur, to have a strategy winning is to basically tag into a market which is expanding, which should expand. So that's one of the most important things, right? And more importantly, like you said, when they started with their first product, which is basically the marketing automation product, they figured out there, and then they later renamed as Hub. But when they started their marketing automation product, like Ramesh, you said, they nailed their sales motion, which was basically inbound, a very B2C like sales motion, very transactional in nature. They don't put salesperson going behind everything. Yeah. It's all product led. And then what happens subsequently is one of the key reasons why they're successful today, right? Which is nothing but expanding their product line to increase the TAM, but build products which fit into the same sales motion.
Absolutely. I think that's a very great point that you're talking about, Sri. The expansion of TAM happened by entering newer markets. Like they launched their sales hub, from marketing hub to sales hub to operations hub and everything else. But what remained constant is they went behind customers who were similar in the terms of buying process as what it was for their marketing hub. So the B2C selling process is what they've had. So they didn't have to change the way they sold. So they didn't waste time looking at newer ways of selling. They stuck to their partner-led model and they stuck to B2C kind of motion. That's it. There's been nothing. There's no enterprise sale. They probably have it now in some pockets, but so the TAM got expanded. The kind of sales motion remained the same.
That's the most important thing. Right? Anyway, just to take a step back, and for people who are wondering, we're talking about HubSpot and we're talking about B2B sales. Right. We suggest you look at the link in our description below, where we would have given the link to the previous part where we talk about the B2C and B2B. That is an interesting part. If you want to know more about that, please check it out. But coming back to the HubSpot story, like Kamesh said, very, very important point to note, expanding TAM doesn't mean expanding to a larger companies right away, right? Or trying to attack enterprise. Because even though HubSpot, I'm sure, you have seen the news, you would have heard it from Dharmesh, everybody else from HubSpot saying that initially they had a lot of pressure to go up market because their competition was Salesforce, right? Imagine the kind of pressure they would have had as a company which is building the marketing automation software to go after mid-market against the larger agencies, right?
Of course.
And they had, they refused to go, take the pressure, right? And stay course to build on their product-led growth, inbound B2C like selling.
Absolutely.
Right? I would say that was one of the number one reason why HubSpot has seen this kind of winning trajectory. Right? We can give multiple examples of it, but just continuing on the HubSpot story. Right?
Yeah.
Now you said expanding TAM, right? And you said consistent sales motion.
Consistent sales motion, right?
And what would be the next one?
If I were looking at a lot of ways you can expand, of course, time, which we do, it's a figment of imagination, right? They've given themselves enough time to stay put and get to the course. There was no rushing, which means that what I can also see is they didn't buy revenue. It wasn't like,
What do you mean by they buy revenue?
I mean, there were no acquisitions uh, of that magnitude to go add into the revenue to get there, right? Because they're now a $2 billion company. They didn't go acquiring smaller companies. They probably would, but the only largest acquisition that we know of HubSpot is the recent Clearbit.
Yeah,
acquisition.
that's also
And,
very strategic on
very
expanding.
strategic on expansion. That could be yet another way of expanding TAM much faster if you really did. But here they stuck to their sales motion. They had newer TAMs. They opened out newer opportunities. Right today, HubSpot was what was known for its marketing automation. What is still known for its marketing automation. We talk to so many customers
Yes.
where their CRM, their sales CRM, is HubSpot.
Of course.
Right? That in itself is, that's a crowded market in itself. You take the CRM space, you have more than 120 players, but they decide to come in. So the entry point or entry time doesn't really matter for any business. You can get into any business, however big the category is, and still win.
Yeah, and Amish, just adding to what you said, right? What you're alluding to is like they crack the distribution. If you see the last 15 years, the inbound, we can just take an example of the inbound, the conference. See the conference, and I remember attending the conference like 12 years back, which was like a very small group of people, like about a few thousand people to 100,000 people now.
Correct.
And the distribution is so much focused in, like everything that their distribution model is so much so aligned to the sales motion, which is B2B. So which means that larger expanding TAM, right?
Yep.
Which is aligning with your sales motion consistently, same on the way, right? Build products which actually fits into the expanding TAM and
Keeping to the same sales motion.
sales
right?
motion. They get better and better. And now you're saying that give yourself time. So they have given them 15 years, maybe
18 years.
18
now.
years.
And what Darvish says very interestingly is to get to the first 100,000 customers, they took 15 years. To get to the next 100,000 customers has just taken them 3 more years from there. Like, look at literally they've taken advantage of the whole idea of compounding. Right?
Correct.
The power
Correct.
of compounding is so huge. What brings me to that is HubSpot is not the only company who's done it. Right?
Okay.
HubSpot is a funded, externally funded kind of company. Let's look at examples even in India, like Zoho. They're not funded, but Zoho is bootstrapped. And today we are talking about $1 billion of revenue. Like, we don't know their customer count, probably even more than 200,000 customers there. But what they have done, the similarity there is they've stuck to one segment of customers who could be. I'm sure they don't go all out in putting up an enterprise team to go and sell. They have partners and they go selling to SMBs.
They pretty much exhibit very similar
Very
strategy.
because yeah,
Over a period of time, they start up with, they manage engine product, they pivot into Zoho. The moment they did that Zoho pivot in 2014, 2004 and 6, consistently they have added more and more products. Now
that's
I think,
expanding TAM again.
correct. And if you look at in the most recent the Zohoric, which is the annual conference, see that
Yep.
remember I mentioned that I saw on the slides which said that 65% of the customers today buy the Zoho One.
Wow.
So which means that once a customer buys one product, and out of that customer base, I think 60 or 50% of them use more than 20 apps. Imagine creating that stickiness where you have businesses, using 20 plus apps from your suite of products.
That's amazing.
Amazing expansion. Right? That is another great example for winning in particular market. Right? Over a period of time, I'm sure they're taking like 20 years plus.
They're 21 years when they probably announced the $1 billion revenue.
Right.
Milestone.
So we can go on examples. As example, another example, I think Atlas.
Yeah, very cool.
Very similar. By the time they kind of raised money, they were already pretty successful. Organic, inbound, right? Very similar strategy, but they went to the other side where they were talking about developers. They started building project management tool and of course, this is a good example of acquisition.
They're great.
Like
They made acquisitions work in their case. They bought revenue, but they still stay.
But the most important thing, even there, Ramesh, if you see, they acquired company which could fit into their sales model, into sales motion.
Yeah.
We have, I'm sure there are enough examples where companies expand their TAM by building products which is not consistent into their core sales number.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretty, of course, there are companies who cracked it, but it's just making your life much more harder, right? At some point in time, you will have to make a choice on the sales motion. In fact, believe me, at least this is my personal take. I think each company should have one sales motion primary, and the rest of the thing should be align to that. Primarily, I think it's easier, more efficient, right? That is one. So just to summarize, Ramesh, let's just come back, take a step back.
I have another the flip
you have
side
another
as
point.
well. Yeah, the flip side as well. There are companies who I also speak to. The founders have reached out recently, and they came back saying, "Hey, I'm playing this enterprise play. I'm already at about $100 million of run rate at which I'm growing. Seems great, but people are saying that there's an opportunity to go SMB. Should they move?
Of course.
Right now, as simple as it sounds,
Yeah.
right? As everyone says, you think of putting up a page, ensure lot of content around, you fill up a form, and you get inbound started, right? It's not easy. For such startups with just 100 million in revenue, right? If in the long, term of things, you're not going to make the next 100 million coming from moving from SMB to from moving from enterprise to SMB in the quick turnaround time. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So the point is,
But why do you think that? Why do you think it can happen? For example,
it takes time.
I'll give an example for what.
No, if it
what
has
you
to
want.
be doubled in half the time that they've reached 100 million through enterprise,
Do you
only
think
because
the-
they think that there's enough volume to go and get, it's not going to be the case, because by the time you set the engine rolling, keep the motion going on, it's not easy, because now they suddenly have to think about this entire content engine. You have to put inbound completely, right? You did this SEO, and then there's a sales assist team which you may probably need doing. So there is humans that you need to put. You also have to put in a lot of systems. There's a workflow in an inbound. It's not just like the enterprise guy goes and pitches and you get the deal, right?
So do you think the DNA is different?
The DNA is
very,
different. The
very
sales-
harder to adapt to a newer
Absolutely.
DNA.
Absolutely. So I think what is very important is, if the company has been successful in a particular mode of selling,
Okay.
the only way to grow revenues is TAM expansion, continuing the motion of sales,
Of that particular.
right? So
Okay.
you can't say I'm going enterprise now. If I have to double down on my revenue, get that in half the period of time I got this, I can't say I'll open up SMB and start doing that. Your focus is completely different. You'd rather open up the TAM. You'd rather look at newer ways to go and sell to your product too. Right? That is probably the right way.
I mean, that's at least, of course, there is very hard to say right or wrong way, Ramesh, but company which has been successfully done that,
Yeah. And that's what I mean.
that's what happened. But for another example, I will tell you, Ramesh, is a good example is Salesforce. Salesforce, initially when they started,
Yeah,
they were more of a, not really SMB, but they were more for small businesses, right? And then they slowly moved up. And I would say like about 3 to 5 years back, when they said we want to relaunch a product for SMB, Salesforce Essentials, it didn't really was such a successful journey for them, right? And then they even acquired companies like Relate IQ and renamed the Salesforce IQ. All of that really doesn't work when your DNA is already changed.
Exactly.
Right?
That's the
So the crux of the matter, right? Just if you want to just summarize, Ramesh, right? The first and foremost thing is that, of course, you should pick up things which is large TAM, growing TAM.
Yeah.
Not importantly large TAM, but the TAM has to grow for the company, right? Second, you need to first understand your core sales motion.
Correct.
Could be either B2B like or could be B2C like.
Yeah.
Right? And when you do the expansion of your TAM, when you build products, build it aligned to these growing
Sales
TAM
motion.
and the sales motion, and give yourself a minimum 10 to 20 years.
I mean, right? A business is a perpetuity, right? So it
Right.
doesn't really matter.
So-
You could do a few mistakes here and there. You would take about a year to course correct and all that. So I think the great answer to your friend